The clinking of glasses and the low hum of conversation filled the small-town diner as the evening rush began to die down. At the counter, a young waitress named Emily wiped her hands nervously on her apron, her eyes darting toward the clock. Her shift was nearly over, but she could already feel the tension in the air. The other waitresses had been whispering all evening, throwing her cautious glances as if she had committed some unspoken crime. She knew why. It was because of the bikers. Emily had always been the kind of person who saw people for who they were, not what they looked like. And in a town where outsiders were often treated with suspicion, she had always been different. When a group of leather-clad bikers rode into the diner the night before, most of the staff froze, whispering words like troublemakers and thugs. But Emily hadn't seen danger in their faces. She had seen tired eyes, hungry stomachs, and men and women who just wanted a hot meal. So she did what she was hired to do. She smiled, took their orders, brought them coffee, and treated them like any other customer. The bikers, who were clearly used to being judged, looked surprised at first, but soon enough the tension melted away. They laughed, cracked jokes with Emily, and even left her the biggest tip she had ever received. To her, it had been a good night. To her manager, Mr. Collins, it was a betrayal. The next morning, Emily was called into his office. His voice was cold, clipped, and final. "You made this diner look bad," he told her. "You served them, you embarrassed us. We don't need that kind of attention. You're fired." Emily stood there, speechless, her heart sinking into her stomach. She tried to explain that she was just doing her job, that the bikers had been polite, that they hadn't caused any trouble. But Mr. Collins didn't care. To him, it was about reputation, about keeping certain people out, about maintaining an image he thought was good for business. She walked out of the diner with tears stinging her eyes, her apron folded tightly in her hands. She had rent due at the end of the week. She had groceries to buy. And now she had no job. That night, Emily sat alone in her small apartment, replaying everything in her head. The laughter of the bikers, their grateful smiles, the heavy slam of the office door when Mr. Collins sent her away. She wondered if she had made a mistake. Maybe she should have just looked the other way, let someone else serve them. But deep down, she knew she couldn't. She wasn't raised to judge people for the way they looked. Her late father, a veteran who had seen the worst and best in humanity, had always told her, "Kindness costs you nothing, Emmy, and sometimes it gives others everything." The following morning, Emily dragged herself out of bed, still unsure what she was going to do. She considered applying at the grocery store or maybe even the gas station, but she couldn't shake the heaviness in her chest. When she walked down Main Street, she noticed something strange. People were staring, not at her, but at the sound in the distance. A low rumble, like thunder rolling across the valley, was growing louder. Within minutes, the unmistakable growl of dozens of motorcycles filled the town square. One by one, bikers rolled in, their engines roaring, leather jackets gleaming under the sun. It wasn't just the few she had served. It was dozens more. The same men and women she had treated kindly had returned, and they hadn't come alone. They parked their bikes in perfect lines outside the diner, their presence impossible to ignore. Curious townsfolk peeked out of shop windows, whispering nervously. Mr. Collins rushed outside, his face pale, trying to put on a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But the bikers weren't there for him. They were there for Emily. The leader, a tall man with a gray beard and kind eyes, stepped forward. "We heard what happened," he said, his voice steady but filled with fire. "This young lady treated us like human beings when no one else would, and she got fired for it. That don't sit right with us." The crowd was silent. Emily stood frozen, her heart pounding. The man turned toward her, softening his tone. "Emily, you showed us respect when you didn't have to, and now we're here to return the favor." Another biker pulled out an envelope and pressed it into her hand. Inside was a stack of cash. "For your rent," he said simply. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head, trying to give it back. "I can't take this. I was just doing my job." But the gray-bearded man smiled. "No, sweetheart, You were doing the right thing. That's a whole lot rarer these days." The bikers didn't stop there. They sat down at the diner again, this time filling every booth, every seat, and every corner. But when Mr. Collins tried to serve them, they refused. "We're not here for your food," one of them said flatly. "We're here for her." The crowd outside grew, murmurs spreading through the town. Some people were shocked, others impressed. Slowly, neighbors who had once whispered about the bikers began to see them differently. They weren't dangerous criminals. They were loyal, grateful people who stood up for someone who had stood up for them. By the end of the day, the story had spread across the town and then across social media. Photos of Emily standing beside the bikers, tears streaming down her face, began circulating online. Comments poured in, praising her for her kindness, condemning the diner for their cruelty, and offers of work began to flood her inbox. Cafes, restaurants, even charities wanted someone like her, someone who saw beyond stereotypes, someone who valued people for who they were. Emily realized then that sometimes losing one door means another, much bigger one is about to open. She didn't just gain new opportunities. She gained a family of protectors who promised that she'd never stand alone again. That night, as the sun set and the bikers prepared to ride out of town, Emily hugged each of them goodbye. The gray-bearded leader squeezed her hand and said, "Don't you ever change, Emily. This world needs more people like you, people who don't judge a book by its cover." As the sound of engines faded into the distance, Emily felt a renewed strength inside her. She didn't just get her dignity back, she discovered her worth. And the town, once blinded by prejudice, had been forced to confront its own unfair judgments. In the days that followed, the diner's reputation plummeted, while Emily's story continued to inspire thousands. She found a new job at a family-run cafe that valued her compassion, where regulars came in not just for coffee, but for her warm smile and genuine kindness. Looking back, Emily understood that being fired had been a blessing in disguise. She had chosen kindness when it was hardest, and in return, life had rewarded her with something far greater than a paycheck. She had reminded everyone, herself included, that humanity is not about appearances but about heart. And as she locked up the cafe one evening, her father's words echoed in her mind once more. "Kindness costs you nothing, Emmy, and sometimes it gives others everything." That was the night Emily finally smiled again, not just because she had survived, but because she had found her purpose.